What's up, fellas? Today, you're going to get something a little different on the podcast, and I think you're going to dig it. It's a shorter episode that's going to be packed with real stories and strategies as we normally try to share. And it's actually a part of a live recording that took place last week, something we're calling a Brotherhood experience. It gives guys who are interested in our community a chance to feel the culture, what type of guys are here, the conversations that are happening behind the scenes. And each Brotherhood experience is different than the one prior because I'm joined by a different co-host. And this time it's Kasim Aslam. If you don't know who that name is, I'm sure if you were in our community, you definitely know that name. But he is the father of Sammy and Ronan, founder of 5, 7, and 8-figure businesses, 2 of which he's had successful exits from. He's the co-founder of Driven Mastermind and the co-founder of Pareto Talent, Pareto talent.com. If you're looking for a good executive assistant, go check it out. But in this discussion today, Kasim shares some powerful lessons that he's learned by being part of this community and how he unconsciously was raising his children to survive a childhood like his own. He unpacks that story, what that means, where he got the idea. And Kasim, by the way, is one of the best dads I've ever had the privilege of being around. And he's also very honest about some of the challenges that he faces, which is how he rolls. Very vulnerable, open, and he's also wicked smart. Literally has won wicked smart at multiple events that he's attended. And during this conversation, we're going to touch on topics that I open up about, like dealing with anger and temper issues. And I share a story about my son, Tiger, and something I learned years ago about how I was treating him as he was, not how he could be. And as usual, we're just trying to bring you the real stuff, which includes the low points and the high points of raising awesome kids as men with very full schedules, as passionate businessmen, men with an entrepreneurial spirit. I think you're going to enjoy the show. And if you hear this, by the way, and you're like, hey, I'd like to join one of these Brotherhood experience calls, you can go to frontrowdads.com, click join the Brotherhood, and you'll see right there is a chance for you to sign up, join a live call for free where you can experience the culture, learn more, ask questions, and see, hey, is this a group of guys that can really support you in becoming the man you want to be, becoming the family man that you want to be, and of course, doing all that and becoming an epic businessman. So the man, the family, the business, that's the formula. Enjoy this conversation with my great friend, Kasim Aslam, and the men who joined us for this live call.
All right, we did it, y'all. So first of all, super appreciate everybody being here. Time's your most valuable resource, time and attention. I've got some years and I'm going to try not to squander it at the risk of pandering. One of the men that's had the most impact on my life is on this call. His name is Ronan. He's quickly turned into one of my best friends. And the point of this call is to talk about fatherhood, which is the most important role I think any of us have. Usama, not you, but any of us that are actually fathers. If you're prepping to be a father. And sadly, oddly, it's not talked about enough. I feel like women do a really, really good job at surrounding themselves with community, and men kind of suffer in silence until recently. But there are groups out there that help and support in groups like Front Row Dads. And so the point of this talk is to just dig into being a dad and share what's working and share maybe what's not working so well. John, how did I do there? Any context you'd add?
Basically, I've acknowledged the fact that whatever you say is pure perfection. So if you're speaking about me, I'll just
leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Yeah. Here's what I would say in return, given that I'll just take the mic from you. Is that the times that I've been around you, Kasim, when I was able to stay at your house and see you interact with your kids, and when we've been able to talk fatherhood, but more importantly, just act in fatherhood, it's been very enriching for me. It reminds me of ways that I can show up for my family with great intention, great questions, curiosity. So I like learning from and with you, brother, and I'm grateful to be here with all these men. Thanks for being here, guys.
Fatherhood is the act of doing. It's a practice that gets really dangerous really quickly when you start to realize, like, man, I don't get this to do over. So I think if you don't mind, we were going to start the call with some of what we're learning right now as dads. And as awkward as a transition as that is, I think that the lesson that I've learned most recently came from our buddy, Tim Nikolai, Thoma. He taught me at the last Front Row Dads retreat. And dude, it blew my mind. He said, I realized I was raising my children to survive my childhood. It was so shaming, but also so freeing at the same time, because everything that I've been doing with my boys up until very recently, I've got 2 little boys, 7 and 9, and they're so different. Sammy is my 9-year-old. He's like the kindest, softest, sweetest, most empathic little cherub in the whole wide world. I took him fishing the other day. We were in Wisconsin. I took him fishing and we're killing worms to put on the fish hook. And Sammy starts accusing us of genocide. He's like, these worms are living beings. They have families. And he's just like, just truly upset. And what was worse is halfway through the fishing, we started using bread instead of worms and it worked better. And Sammy was like, you see what you've done? And he wouldn't, like, the fish, was catch and release and the fish all go in this bucket. And he started a petting zoo and he only had one customer, his brother, who then refuses to pay. But that's Sammy. And then my youngest, Ronan, is a wrecking ball of demon hellfire bent on death and destruction. And they just came out that way. Like, I've done nothing to create these people. Like, this whole nature versus nurture argument is bullshit in my mind entirely. Like, there's no nurture. It's only nature. And then bumpers playing bowling, right? Like, these kids are just bowling balls rocketing down the aisle at 100 million miles an hour. And you can kind of correct where the ball doesn't go. And the reason I think that's so relevant is because I was raised by a blind single mother and Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Like, me and my little brother were welfare babies in the ghetto. And I've got two little North Scottsdale Trust Fund babies. And for the first 6-7 years of their life, I'm raising them to survive my childhood, which is completely incongruent with their experience. And when Tim said those words to me, I was like, oh gosh, these life lessons that I'm offering my children are not relevant to their experience, nor hopefully will they ever be. But without that reflection from another dad who's ahead of me, right? Like, his kids are older than me and he has a whole tribe of them. I just never would have gotten that feedback and I never would have had the opportunity to course correct. And so there's part of me that, like, laments the first 5 years of me attempting to do that. And then there's another part of me that's like, thank God I got that soundbite now and I didn't get it when they were 12 or 15 or 20. And I think that's why conversations like this are so important, because that one line from that one very brilliant man changed the entire course of my children's future forever. And it changed the way I think about being a father. And it changed the way I think about my kids and who they are and what they need to learn and how I need to provide and the bumpers that I put up.
The great Tim Nikolaev, who, by the way, left my home about 30 minutes ago. And Tim, we didn't plan this, but talking about how great Tim is, a father of 5, amazing human. He also had shared with me a while ago just the question of, am I raising my children or are they raising me? Was I put here to teach them or was I gifted them so that they could teach me? Who really is doing all of the growing? Am I trying to imprint? To very much a cousin of what you're talking about, of like, we're raising our kids to survive our childhood, is like, I want to imprint all of me onto you because I want to protect you. So if I got hurt, I'm going to make sure you don't. If I have feelings about something, I'm going to make sure you have those feelings as well. Maybe I'll shortcut your learning. And as much of there's beauty in that and wanting to do the right thing, so much of fatherhood is also about just holding a structure, the bowling analogy of they have to hold a little space for them to be able to just become who they're going to be, to go through the thing that they're going to go through. And, I've found that sometimes it's what I don't say that's more powerful than what I do say. But I also can't use that as an excuse not to lean in as a father and to share myself openly. And of course, there's a role of a dad that's very important here, a necessary voice in the home, a necessary voice for your sons and daughters. It's a yes and, which is very much baked into the ethos of Front Row Dads.
I'm just curious from our attendees, if y'all don't mind, drop in just so we can get a sense of who's who. Let us know who your kids are. So I'm going to do 7B, 9B, because I think that's helpful. It's helpful to calibrate and figure out, like, how old are they? Are you raising little boys or little girls? Eric's farewell, 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and 9-year-old. Yeah, I forgot. I'm right behind you, aren't I, buddy? Jason, wow, man. Scott, you have a 22-year-old? You start when you were 5?
Yeah, who knew? Didn't even know he existed until he was 15.
That's so funny. Usama, that's your future. Go take notes from Scott.
So Usama must be getting scared right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Austin just has a gun to my head right now. He's coming after me.
I'm telling you. Jamie's got a 23-year-old. Their own testimony. I could not agree with you more. Gosh, Mike, look at you, dude. 2 9-year-olds, twins, a 3-year-old, an 18-month-old, a 5-month-old, and 2 stepchildren. Wow. Good for you, man. Look at the impact you're making on the world. That sort of reminds me of what we were talking about at Driven, John, just ripples. Fatherhood is the best ripple activity I can possibly think of, because the way that you're going to reverberate, Jordan Peterson has this whole talk about how we're all nodes in a network and information propagates in a network manner. And so if you conceptualize yourself as a speck of dust among 7 billion, then nothing you do matters. and we should all be nihilists and just get drunk and high and have tons of sex. Or if you're not a speck of dust, you're a node in a network and information propagates in a network manner. And if you know 1,000 people and they know 1,000 people, then you're one person away from a million people and two people away from a billion people. And I might have gotten my math wrong, but the concept's right. And within the node in a network theory, the propagation of information increases based off of the strength and importance of those connections, right? So like a best friend and a friend have different pipes between those nodes, and a father and a child, that might be one of the strongest pipes, or a parent and a child. And so the way that we ripple, I don't think there's a stronger ripple effect than there is as a parent, and how we end up showing up beyond where our physical bodies may end. That's what continues. And so you look at somebody like Mike, and with the whole tribe of kids and stepkids, like, gosh, what an amazing ripple effect that's going to be. And the fact that he's here doing the work, I think is really awesome too. Sorry for that departure. That felt a little tangential.
All your tangents are welcome, Kasim. Kasim, I have a question for you, by the way, and I'm going to ask this question to everybody because I think it's a great place to start. Is what's a struggle for you in fatherhood and parenting? And maybe you can just throw in the chat box, if you're in a place to be able to do so, in as few words or as many words as you want. But just throw in like something that's a struggle for you. There could be many struggles for you, but something that comes up. And as you think about that, and as you put it in the chat box, and I'll go to Kasim in a minute here, is I'll just lead by saying my struggle has been, continues to be, managing my own energy in my home. And the way I would articulate that is that I'm a very passionate person. It serves me greatly in my life. I remember as a child, my mom saying, like, you really feel deeply. Well, I love feeling deeply. I actually love what that's created in my life. It's been a source for creation. What I've also noticed, though, is that when my volume goes up and my intensity goes up, that's not always received in a way that supports other people. And so for my children and my family, managing my emotions or having emotional intelligence, not getting carried away, not getting so animated, there's very much a, like, said differently by many people, is like, the only person more activated than you, son, is me, right? Like, calm yourself. It's like, who needs the calming? Clearly I do. So I just wanted to share that initially. So Kasim, I don't know, man, what are you struggling with?
Well, one of them, to be honest with you, is just straight to the point, is temper. Man, I lose my shit with my kids. It's like I'm on a ride. You ever been on one of those really cool rides at Universal Studios? Where like you're in Godzilla, and you're watching Godzilla like wreck the town. You're like, this is, like, I'm just an observer. I'm a passive observer inside of this giant being that's just wreaking havoc. And it's cool when you're at Universal Studios in your own head and your children are the town. And I'm just watching and I'm like, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm not stopping. I can't believe I'm getting louder. I can't believe, like, my son Ronan is really mean to his older brother. And Ronan lost his temper with Sammy, grabbed him by the shirt collar, choked him, pulled him back on the stairs. Could have really hurt him. And I got mad at Ronan because Ronan lost his temper. So I decided to model his behavior, and I lost my temper. And we have yet to move into corporal punishment. I don't want to cause the incendiary conversation that talks about whether or not it's appropriate. It's just not something that I want to do just yet. The most I'll do is I grab Ronan by his chest. I grabbed him, like, slam my hand to his chest, and I bring him close, and I'm like nose to nose with this 7-year-old. Because that's how I've chosen to communicate with myself. I'm a 40-year-old man, and the best I can do with this 7-year-old little boy is, like, I'm bigger and stronger than you. And because you just used brute force against your brother, let me show you how, and I'm watching myself do it. And I'm like, I know in the moment, I'm actually helping teach him how to do this again. The best, most ignorant and hypocritical part of the whole thing, Roman, is I sat him down and I was like, we're going to come up with coping mechanisms for you to learn to control your temper. And I swear to God, this little kid is a thug, dude. He's like just full on stone cold gangster. He looks at me and he goes, just no fear in his eyes whatsoever. He goes, impossible.
I love it.
I was just so impressed with him. I was like, man, there's just nothing that's going to rattle him. Okay, and as I'm talking through it, I'm like, you can remove yourself from the situation, something I didn't do. You can stop and take 10 deep breaths, something I didn't do. You can stop and count to 10, something I didn't do. Like, I'm coaching my son on how to control his temper while having and continuing to lose my temper. It's such a brutal, going back to Tim, who again, he's just the most quotable human in the world, isn't he?
Goes back to Tim.
Yeah, and everything just goes back to Tim. Everything in life I've learned is like that infinity symbol, and Tim Nikolai was in the center. It's him raising me too. Like before I can teach my son to control his temper and control his emotions, I got to go crack the code on that, man, and I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just so much about me having to doing the work.
Guys, if you can, maybe even consider writing something in the chat that would be indicative of a lesson that a son or daughter has taught you. Like, could you think of what is a lesson that you've learned from your kids, continue to learn from your kids over and over and over again? But what is that lesson? I'd love to see what you have. Recognizing my kids' energy skills, passions, and personalities to enable and channel them to try, fail, learn, build into stronger personalities versus trying to teach them how to do it. Nice. Presence. Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will said something similar. He said being fully present. That resonated with me too.
Yeah, big time. And you know what's interesting is I'll make an observation myself. Why is it that kids are so good at helping us to be present? Is because they are fully present. When you ask Ocean, who's 9, you know, my 9-year-old at the end of the day, how was his day? If you ask him how his day was, what he really is going to tell you is how his last 5 minutes were. And that is the entire day. It doesn't, whatever happened in the last 5 minutes is how his whole day was, because he's so in the moment. That's a beautiful thing in many ways, which is also why in some cases it's so easy to just move on. They can have a total temper tantrum, let all the energy out, and then 10 minutes later just be, you know, all is good. They can be. And that's not the experience of every child, of course. Some may have that energy reverberating a little longer, but many can shake it off. I've heard it's very much like how animals are in the animal kingdom. Like when you see them shaking off energy, they found a way to just get rid of it. And because maybe even young kids haven't learned to suppress it, like, hey, this energy isn't welcome in this environment, so I'm going to stuff it down and cover it up with like this even cool behavior. They just let it all go. But that's why they can move through it oftentimes so fast. So it's the thing that we're actually trying to tell them not to do is the thing that they need to do. I was listening to this morning Becky Kennedy with Huberman. Becky Kennedy wrote a book called Good Inside. I don't know if you've heard of it or read it, but it's a solid read. And you could go get little samplings of this even if you just Googled her and Huberman. There's a 10-minute clip. They were talking about the most powerful words you could speak to a kid was, I believe you. Like they'll go, my experience is this. I'm frustrated. I'm upset. It's like, I believe that's true for you. Right? Hey, this is how I see things. I trust that's how you see it. And it's really all that you're saying is, I trust you to trust yourself, right? Because confidence comes from self-trust. And the part that doesn't work, I think, my vote would be when we're like, that's not your experience, right? Whatever it is, it's, you know, hey, it's cold outside. No, it's not. It's like telling your child or your human to not trust themselves, and that their calibration is off. Or gaslighting your children is another one. Like what I mean by that is something's wrong with you. And they say, Dad, what's wrong with you? And you're like, nothing, all is good. Now, if you're really off and you tell them that all is good, their little nervous system is basically saying, hey, something's wrong here. And you're going, your calibration's off. You're wrong. Everything's good. It's a form of gaslighting your children. So the more that we can teach children to trust their guidance system, the more that we can believe their truth. It doesn't have to be your truth or the truth, but their truth. I think the better we are. I got to share this too, man. This mug right here, you can see this was given to me by a very good friend of mine that sadly recently passed, a great man named John Ronan. And it says, I believe in you, son. And you can see these guys climbing on the side. I want to share with you guys a story that is why this is etched on this mug right here. So when my now 15-year-old was probably about 5, give or take, I was living up in South Jersey, and we were at like one of these pop-up parks. It's not too far from where Jamie Bogger and I met as friends. And I was at this park, and they had a temporary rock climbing wall set up in the middle of the park with all the Ferris wheels and all the things. And Tiger walks by and he asks if he can climb this. And immediately in my mind, I'm like, he can't fit in the harness. This is for big kids. And I try to usher him to a little kiddie ride that I think he would have more fun on, you know? And because me, it was efficiency. I don't want to stop. I don't want to waste the time. I already made up in my mind, this is an activity for adults. So I tried to talk him out of it, but he was adamant that he wanted to climb this wall. But in my mind, I'm like, there's no way. This is, again, he can't reach I've got a whole story how he can't climb the wall. The holds are too far apart. He gets this harness on and he gets all the way up the wall to almost the very top. I can't believe it. So I'm sitting there astounded at this kid who went 90% of the way up the wall. And the wall kind of inverts out a little bit like this. It's like the most difficult part is the last 6 feet of the wall. It's maybe 40 feet high, I'm guessing, right? Maybe 30 feet high. But he gets to this spot and he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, because he's stuck, and he turns around and he goes, Papa. He calls me Papa. He goes, Papa. He goes, I can't. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what do I do in that moment, right? What do I say? And I was like, it's okay, buddy. You tried. Because in my mind, I was like, yeah, I knew he couldn't do it. Good job. You tried. You got further than I even thought you could. But the guy who was working the rock wall, who was like the attendant who put him in the harness, he looks at me and he goes, hey, man, I think your boy can do it. And he looks back up at Tiger and he goes, hey, little man, try again. Which is like, hear this? You know, you see this other man modeling this great wisdom of like, I believe in you. I don't believe in my own son. I'm like, it's okay. You tried. I knew you were going to fail. Come on down. And this guy working the rock wall is like, you got this, man. Go for it. Stay with it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to look. And sure enough, dude, Tiger, with the belief of the strange man at working the rock wall, not his father, climbs to the very, very top, hits the button, the lights go off, and other people that are standing there watching this are all clapping for him. And he comes down with this great pride, which, by the way, could have gone both ways. One, he comes down defeated, and the other one, a total champion, which he did. He came down off the wall, total champion. Comes over and, you know, I high-five him and other people are high-fiving him. I'm like, you did it, buddy. You did it. I'm so proud of you. And this guy standing next to me is like, how old's your son? And I'm like, he's 5. And he goes, that's really impressive for a 5-year-old. I go, I know, man, I'm really blown away. And then the guy goes, hey, whatever his name is, you know, Tiger's getting his harness taken off and the guy's talking to me. And he eventually says, where do you live? And I'm like, over here. What do you do for a living? Or what do you do? And I said, I'm a motivational speaker. And I realized how ridiculous that sounded, that I was a motivational speaker who basically just gave up on his son. And I'm like, why is it that I can go around the world telling everybody, achieve your biggest dreams and goals, never give up, see something bigger for yourself. I'm telling stories about how Jamie and I ran ultra marathons together. And that's where this came from, is this moment of realization that belief in my son was something that I wasn't giving in those moments. And then I got curious why. And here's why. Because I was treating Tiger like I remembered him last week, last month. I treated him like I remembered him, not who he could become in any moment. I was carrying his 3-year-old into his 5-year-old moment. I was carrying his 4-year-old into his 5-year-old moment. I was not treating him like he was a 5-year-old about to be 6-year-old, elevating, growing, achieving. I forgot. And it took a stranger to see that and to believe in my son in a way that helped me believe in my son in a new way. So the lesson was treat people as they could be, not as how they have been, or even who they are in right now. Because in any moment, that child has a breakthrough, they have confidence, they have belief because you gave it to them. And you can not only give that to your kids, but you can give it to your friends' kids, because the uncle role is so important in relationships like this, where you get to see another child in a new light. This just happened, by the way, at a Front Row Dad event in Austin, where my buddy, his son was right there. And I said, I see your son in this way. And then he came to me later and he said, I didn't even see my son in that way. But now that you pointed out, I do see it. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Gentlemen, if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to experience the FRD culture yourself and get answers to the questions that you have about what's expected from you as a member, the time commitment, the cost, etc., all you have to do is go to frontrowdads.com, click join the Brotherhood, and then select attend a Brotherhood experience. From there, you can decide if this tribe is the right environment for you to continue your evolution as the man, the father, the husband, and the businessman that your future is calling you into. This group isn't for everyone, but it is for someone, and maybe that's you. But neither of us will know that until it's explored further, so I hope to see you on the next Brotherhood Experience call. And to all the members listening, if you've got that buddy that you know belongs in FRD, send them to the website, have them join the next experience call, and we'll see you there.